They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But in Ravencross Valley, Montana, that road shook with the thunder of engines when the Dark Tempest MC rolled into town. They thought they'd found an easy mark, a sleepy mountain community, a modest church led by a soft-spoken priest, a place too quiet to fight back. But what they didn't know, what they should have known, was that Father Callahan Riker wasn't just any priest. Before he wore the collar, he wore the Delta Force insignia. Before he saved souls, he saved lives in the most dangerous war zones on Earth. And ignoring that truth, that would become the Dark Tempest's most costly mistake. What began as low-level intimidation spiraled fast into a full-blown confrontation that would rattle Ravencross Valley to its core, uncovering long-buried secrets and testing how far one man of peace would go to protect the people he'd sworn to guide. Before we dive deeper, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if stories like this speak to you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode, you won't want to miss it. Now back to Ravencross. The autumn wind drifted through the valley, scattering golden leaves across the steps of St. Michael's Church. Inside, Father Riker knelt in silent prayer, sunlight flickering through stained glass as it caught the silver cross on his chest. But his moment of peace ended with the low growl of distant engines, growing louder with each passing day. Sister Vesper stepped into the chapel, her usually calm voice now edged with tension. "Father, Deputy Redwood's here. She says it's urgent." In the vestibule stood Deputy Phoenix Redwood, her badge glinting in the evening light, one hand resting near her sidearm, a habit Father Riker didn't miss. "It's the Dark Tempest MC," she said bluntly, "and they're not just passing through this time. Warnings came in from 3 counties. They're moving with purpose." Father Riker didn't flinch. His face remained calm, but his posture shifted. Years of elite training don't just vanish under a priest's robes. "How many?" he asked. 30, maybe more. Led by Talon Steelhawk goes by Raptor. They've already hit 4 towns this year. Churches, schools, family businesses. And no one stands up, no one speaks out. Fear shuts every mouth. The sunlight faded as Riker methodically locked the church doors. His movements were fluid, efficient. Less priest, more soldier. Across town at Zephyr's Diner, whispers spread like wildfire over steaming mugs of coffee. Zephyr Castillo wiped the counter with a shaking hand, listening as fear settled in the room. "They torched a church in Idaho," someone muttered. Pastor tried to stop them, lost everything. At the clinic, Dr. Lyra Thornfield paused at her window, watching shadows stretch across the street. "We need to shut things down. Call the state police," she said. But Mayor Thus Drake cut in sharply. "And bring that kind of attention here? No, we handle it ourselves, quietly." Only Officer Stryker Cross noticed the mayor's fingers trembling as he straightened his tie. Back at St. Michael's, Father Riker opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside, an old wooden box. His fingers brushed the burned-in Delta Force emblem, then he closed it again. Some tools are only meant for when there's no other way. Sister Vesper found him arranging candles for evening service. "What about the youth center kids?" she asked. "We keep everything normal," Riker replied. His voice was soft but firm. "Fear spreads faster than courage. We hold the line." Suddenly, a radio crackled. 2 bikes spotted, mountain pass, lights off, scouts. Father Riker climbed the bell tower, scanning the horizon. His eyes tracked movement, gauged distance, calculated lines of sight. Instincts, once dormant, now reawakened. Raven Jaya, the town's cook, rushed to lock up his restaurant. Across the street, Mayor Drake's daughter helped old Mrs. Chen into her car. "Get home before dark," she urged. The town's mask of normalcy cracked when the gas station attendant simply walked off the job. Pumps still running, lights still on. The message was clear. Ravencross was bracing for a storm. Deputy Redwood positioned her patrol car near the church, lights off, engine running. Officer Cross took position on the opposite end of town. They both knew their badges meant little against what was coming, but still, they stood. Inside the church, Father Riker completed his evening prayers. His words were scripture, but his mind was battlefield sharp, calculating, planning, preparing. The box in his office held more than memories. It held options. He prayed he wouldn't need them, and Sister Vesper quietly secured the final door. The basement shelter beneath St. Michael's had been built for snowstorms. Thick walls, backup generators, a place to ride out nature's fury. But tonight, it was bracing for a different kind of tempest. Sister Vesper had seen it, that moment when Father Riker opened the box. The priest's calm had cracked just enough to glimpse something deeper, something dangerous. A warrior, still sharp beneath the cloth. As night settled in over Ravencross Valley, the rumble of motorcycles grew louder. The town held its breath. The dark tempest MC was approaching, confident, ruthless, and completely unaware they were riding into something far more dangerous than a sleepy town with a soft-spoken priest. In his office, Mayor Drake made one final call, his hands trembling as he dialed. "They're here," he whispered. "God help us all, if they start asking questions." On the steps of St. Michael's Church, Father Riker stood tall, his white collar gleaming in the darkness. His posture was peaceful, but his eyes tracked movement with surgical precision. The time for prayers alone had passed. The dark tempest MC was about to learn. Not every storm rolls through unchallenged, and not every priest preaches from the pews. Some carry more than scripture. Ravencross Valley's darkest hour had come, but with it would come truth. Truth powerful enough to shake the community to its very foundations. 30 motorcycles rolled into town like a wave of chrome and thunder, Main Street echoing with their roar. Headlights cut through the night, casting jagged shadows on quiet homes and shuttered windows. At the front rode Talon Raptor Steelhawk, his leather vest stitched with patches like war medals, each one a story soaked in blood. The gang moved in tight formation, practiced and precise. This wasn't chaos. It was a strategy. Father Riker stood still, a solitary figure framed by the church doors as the first riders circled the building. Their headlights filtered through the stained glass, warping the light across the altar into a kaleidoscope of shifting shadows. Inside, Sister Vesper stood in the doorway, gripping her rosary until her knuckles turned white. Raptor killed his engine. The sudden silence hit harder than the noise. "Nice town you've got here, Father," he called out, voice smooth and mocking. "Shame if something happened to it." "All are welcome in God's house," Riker replied, his voice clear and unwavering. "Even those who've lost their way." Raptor laughed, a sharp, cold sound like shattered glass. "Oh, we're not lost, Father," he said, stepping off his bike. "We've found exactly what we're looking for." Inside the church office, Deputy Redwood watched from behind partially drawn blinds. Her radio was silent, but her instincts were on full alert. She could see it too. Father Riker's stance had shifted, balanced, hands relaxed, but ready. "Avalanche, Titan," Raptor barked. "Check the perimeter. Wraith, go inside. Make sure the good Father isn't hosting any unauthorized gatherings." 3 riders peeled off. Wraith moved with the kind of precision that didn't come from bar fights or backroad skirmishes. It came from somewhere far more structured. Father Riker noticed. He didn't blink. "The church is open for evening prayers," he said calmly, "though I doubt that's what brought you to Ravencross Valley." Raptor stepped closer, invading Riker's space with slow, deliberate menace. "Smart man," he said. "See little towns like this? They need protection. The world's a mess. We offer a service." "Protection," Riker echoed. His tone weighted enough to make several bikers shift uncomfortably. "That's a sacred responsibility." At Zephyr's Diner, Mayor Drake stared through the window as more bikers spread through town. His phone buzzed, a message from an unlisted number. "Control your priest, or we will. Across town, doctor." Thornfield paused mid-treatment as motorcycles circled her clinic 3 times. The message was clear. There were no safe spaces left in Ravencross. Inside the church, Wraith moved between pews with eerie precision. He wasn't casing the place. He was searching. Methodically, professionally. His fingers tapped for hollow spaces, checking for more than just hiding spots. "You're looking for something specific," Sister Vesper said quietly. Wraith stopped, turned, his gaze cold and sharp. "Smart woman," he said. "Be a shame if you got any smarter." Outside, Raptor continued his charade. "Protection costs money, Father. Clubs don't run on kindness. We were thinking $2,000 a week, special rate, out of respect for the cloth. Before Riker could answer, a crash rang out inside. Wraith had knocked over a candle stand. Wax splattered across marble like blood on a battlefield. "Oops," Wraith said with a smirk. "Clumsy me." Father Riker's eyes didn't leave Raptor. $2,000 a week, he repeated slowly. "And if we refuse this generous offer?" Raptor smiled, a little too wide. "Well, the way I hear it, churches burn real easy. All that old wood, all those candles. Accidents happen." From her position, Deputy Redwood's hand tightened on her weapon, but she held. Father Riker had been clear. "Wait for my signal, no matter what." "You seem well informed about church fires," Riker said, his voice calm but sharp as a blade, almost professional. For a moment, something flickered in Raptor's eyes. Recognition, or maybe something deeper, like the first trace of fear. There was something in Father Riker's voice, something Cypher Thorne couldn't place. In the crowd of watchers, the biker lingered longer than the others, observing the priest's composure with growing unease. This man wasn't reacting like most victims. He didn't show fear. He didn't try to appease. It felt off. Across the street, Mayor Drake rushed up the church steps, trying to project authority he clearly didn't possess. "Now, see here. This is a peaceful town," he stammered. "We don't want any trouble." "Trouble already found you," Raptor said without even glancing at him. "Only question now is, what's it going to cost?" From his patrol car, Officer Cross narrowed his eyes. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a biker gang making threats. They were moving with purpose, mapping buildings, testing responses. Every threat masked a deeper pattern. Reconnaissance. On the steps, Father Riker stepped aside, gesturing toward the church doors. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," he said smoothly, away from prying eyes. Raptor hesitated, a micro-expression flickering across his face. It was subtle, but Riker noted it instantly. The biker leader had a script, and this invitation didn't fit. Something about the priest made him wary of improvising. "Tomorrow night," Raptor snapped. "We'll be back for your answer. $2,000 a week, Father. Be smart." With practiced ease, the gang mounted their bikes and roared off, their engines splitting the silence like thunder. But Riker noticed the way they split into units, each taking separate routes. It was a maneuver, not a retreat. Sister Vesper stepped beside him, watching taillights vanish into the night. "They're not here for money, are they?" "No," Riker replied quietly. "They're looking for something. Something specific." Deputy Redwood emerged from the shadows, her weapon now holstered. "That one, Wraith, he moved like a seal. Maybe special forces." "Definitely," Riker confirmed. "Which means this isn't just extortion. This is something else entirely." Inside the church, Mayor Drake wiped his forehead with a trembling hand. "We should just pay them. Keep things quiet." Father Riker turned to him, eyes steady. The look made the mayor take a step back. "Quiet isn't always righteous, Mr. Mayor," Riker said, "and some storms need to break before healing begins." In the distance, motorcycle engines echoed through the valley like an unanswered threat. The Dark Tempest MC had marked their territory, but they hadn't recognized the deeper current running through Raven Cross. Tomorrow night, they'd be back. But what they didn't realize was that the real danger was waiting for them. If this story's drawing you in, hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring more tales like this to life. Now let's get back to it. Dawn broke over Ravencross Valley, turning the church steeple gold, masking the tension rising across the town. Father Riker hadn't slept. He'd spent the night unrolling blueprints long forgotten, tracing the bones of the church with a soldier's eye. There were secrets in this foundation, secrets someone desperately wanted to find. Deputy Redwood arrived just after sunrise, a manila folder tucked under her arm. "You were right," she said. "Ran Wraith's profile through federal databases. Former Navy SEAL. Discharged under questionable circumstances 3 years ago. And the others? Avalanche and Titan, both ex-private military contractors. Cypher's a ghost, but his movements suggest similar training. These aren't just bikers, Father. They're professionals, using the Dark Tempest patch as cover. Sister Vesper entered with coffee and worry. The mayor's called an emergency town council meeting. He's pushing hard to pay them off. Says it's the only way to avoid bloodshed. Riker took a slow sip of his coffee. He seems unusually eager to keep this quiet. His voice carried something deeper, years of interrogation experience sharpened in places the mayor could never imagine. Almost like he knows something he's not sharing. Across town, Zephyr Castillo unlocked the diner to find chaos. Shattered glass, tables overturned, booths ripped open, but something about the damage felt staged. As he swept up glass, his broom caught on a loose floorboard, one that had been pried open. They weren't just vandalizing, he said when Dr. Thornfield stopped by for coffee. They were searching, looking for something hidden. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mayor Drake and his daughter Willow. The mayor's usual polished smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Zephyr, about your insurance claim, don't file it through the company. I'll handle it personally. No need for outsiders. Let's keep things in-house. From his corner booth, Officer Cross sipped his coffee and watched carefully. The mayor's insistence felt wrong, the kind of wrong that made a cop's instincts fire like alarm bells. Back at St. Michael's, Father Riker descended into the basement, flashlights sweeping over stone walls carved more than a century ago. Sister Vesper followed as he examined the foundation, each step slow, deliberate, surgical. The church was built in 1887, she whispered, during the Silver Rush, and the old mine tunnels run underneath. Riker nodded. And someone thinks there's something valuable down here. Valuable enough to send trained operatives in disguise. Valuable enough to risk war with a town that still remembers how to fight. He paused, hand resting on the wall, listening to the echoes in the stone. The box in his drawer didn't just hold weapons, it held truth. And in Ravencross Valley, truth was about to become the deadliest weapon of all. They weren't bikers, not really. They were something far more dangerous, professionals in disguise, moving with purpose through Ravencross Valley, mapping routes, tracing lines that hadn't existed on paper in over a century. Deputy Redwood's radio crackled to life. Another 3 circling the mill, 1 at the old train depot. It wasn't intimidation, it was coordination. A methodical sweep following the path of the tunnels buried deep beneath the town. Raven Jaya, the local chef, shared a quiet truth with Father Riker over a pot of stew in his shuttered restaurant. My grandfather used to say the church was built on top of the original mine office, he murmured. Said the miners used the tunnels to move something precious, something they didn't want showing up on the mining company's books. Their conversation was cut short by Mayor Drake bursting through the door, voice too loud, posture too forced. Old legends, that's all they are. Let's focus on something real, like your overdue health inspection, Raven. The threat hung there, awkward and hollow. Father Riker caught the mayor's reflection in a wall mirror, sweat on his brow, jaw too tight, eyes darting. A man scrambling to keep control in a situation already lost. Outside, more bikes rumbled in, nearly 50 now. They moved in patrol patterns, too tight, too precise, each route lined up with key points on the old underground map. They're getting desperate, Deputy Redwood said as she reviewed surveillance footage beside Riker. Whatever they're looking for, they're running out of time. In the church archive, Sister Vesper discovered something curious, an 1888 ledger entry. The church received anonymous donations, she said, weekly shipments of silver bullion, 3 months straight. Then, nothing. At that moment, Father Riker's satellite phone buzzed, a secure line from another life. The voice on the other end belonged to his old Delta Force commander. Careful, Riker, the voice warned. You're poking a hornet's nest that goes higher than you think. That SEAL Wraith, his discharge wasn't just shady, it was buried. People with real power made sure his record disappeared. The afternoon brought new waves of pressure, but not for money this time. Members of the Dark Tempest began visiting specific townsfolk, not demanding cash, but asking questions. About the church, about the original mine, about long-forgotten stories of hidden silver shipments. Dr. Thornfield treated 3 different residents for accidents, each one tied to buildings sitting over the tunnel grid. The message couldn't be clearer: talk or suffer. Back in his office, Father Riker studied a photograph from the church's construction. Something jumped out immediately. The foundation stones didn't match the local quarry. They'd been brought in, specifically chosen. The silver was never the treasure, Riker said under his breath. It was the distraction, a smokescreen. Something else was hidden here, and someone still willing to kill for it. Then Willow Drake, the mayor's daughter, arrived, her hands shaking, face pale. "Father," she said, lowering her voice, "I found something in my dad's study, documents about the church. Military clearance levels I didn't know existed. He's hiding something big." As night blanketed the valley, the puzzle pieces finally started clicking into place. The Dark Tempest MC wasn't a biker gang. It was a cover, one backed by powerful forces searching for something hidden during the Silver Rush. Something buried beneath the church. Father Riker opened the wooden box again. It wasn't just filled with weapons from his past. It held tools, contacts, access codes, identities, all the parts of himself he'd buried deep. But now they were necessary. Because the men rolling into town weren't here to negotiate. They were here to uncover and erase. The next evening, St. Michael's filled quietly, not with tourists or choir rehearsals, but with locals, people who no longer trusted the safety of their homes. Evening prayers began like always, but the mood in the church was different, heavier. Sister Vesper had positioned certain townsfolk in strategic spots. None of them would realize the pews gave them the high ground, the exits, the sight lines. Father Riker's voice carried through the sanctuary, calm and measured, but in his ear, Deputy Redwood's voice crackled through the hidden earpiece. 53 bikes, approaching from 3 directions. They're boxing us in. The doors burst open. Mayor Drake stumbled inside, face red with panic. "Father, please, there's still time. Pay them. Don't make them do this." Father Riker turned slowly. "Do what, Mr. Mayor?" he asked. "Use the alternatives outlined in the classified documents your daughter found." The color drained from Drake's face. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Outside, engines growled louder. Headlights cut through the stained glass like searchlights. The Dark Tempest MC had returned. But this time, they weren't just up against a small town. They were about to face a man who knew how to fight fire with fire, and a town that was done being afraid. Talon Raptor Steelhawk led his men through the church doors, the sound of their boots echoing against ancient stone. Gone were the theatrics of biker bravado. This time, they moved with deadly focus, the way trained operatives do when they're not threatening but executing. From the pulpit, Father Riker watched them calmly. "Evening services are still in progress," he said, voice resonating with quiet authority that made several of the men pause out of pure instinct. "Though I doubt you're here for spiritual guidance." Raptor's laugh was cold and hollow. "Time's up, Father. $2,000 a week, that was the offer, but now," he gestured. Wraith stepped forward carrying a steel briefcase. The moment the locks clicked open, the tone of the room changed. "We're here for something specific," Raptor continued, "something this church has been hiding for a very long time." Sister Vesper's eyes narrowed as she watched Wraith's team fan out with surgical precision, scanning walls and floors. Their movement confirmed her deepest suspicion. This wasn't a search. It was a recovery operation. "The silver shipments of 1888, Father Riker said, walking down from the pulpit. The mention drew startled glances. "But that was never about silver, was it?" He paused at the altar, eyes fixed on Raptor. "What's buried beneath this church is something far more valuable. Something worth sending former Special Forces operators to retrieve." Raptor's face shifted just enough to confirm it. A microscopic tell. Riker caught it immediately. Years of Delta Force training didn't fade. "You're better informed than we expected, Priest," Raptor said. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" That depends, Riker said, now standing just feet away, on whether this mission has official clearance or if it's off the books. Either way, desecrating a house of God seems like a heavy thing to carry on your conscience. At the altar, Wraith's detectors pinged. "Here," he called. "There's a void beneath the stone, just like the blueprints showed. Unauthorized modifications, late 1880s. From the back of the sanctuary, Mayor Drake stood trembling, reaching for his phone. "Don't," Riker said without turning. The mayor froze. "Whatever call you're about to make, whatever cleanup crew you're trying to summon, ask yourself what side of this you want to be on when the truth comes out." Around the sanctuary, the congregation stayed quiet, just as Sister Vesper had instructed earlier. Their presence was no longer symbolic. Their seating had a purpose, tactical. Deputy Redwood and Officer Cross held positions near exits, weapons concealed but ready. Raptor turned back to the altar. "Clear the civilians. This part's not for public viewing." "They stay," Riker said, and his voice, low and level, cut through the air like a blade. "Whatever's under this church has remained hidden for over a century. You should ask yourselves why. Some secrets stay buried for a reason." Dr. Thornfield, seated near the back, caught something unusual on Wraith's device. "That's not a standard metal detector," she whispered. "It's tuned for something else, something electromagnetic." Then, from the shadows, Cypherthorn stepped forward. "Stand down, priest," he said. "You may be Delta, but you're outnumbered and outgunned. Don't make this messier than it has to be." Father Riker tilted his head slightly. "Interesting choice of words," he replied. "Messy implies complexity, like explaining why a biker gang employs former military operatives, why they're using classified-grade scanning equipment, or why the mayor of this town has clearance-only documents about a church built in 1887. The tension hit its peak. Raptor signaled his men forward, moving toward the altar, but Father Riker stepped in. They stood face to face, one former warrior wearing a collar, the other hiding behind leather and muscle. They recognized each other, different lives, same training, same instincts. "Last chance," Raptor said. "Step aside. Let us finish the job and no one gets hurt." Before Riker could respond, click. The unmistakable sound of multiple rounds chambering echoed through the sanctuary. Suddenly, everything made sense. The congregation's seating wasn't symbolic. It was strategic. "Cavalry's here," Deputy Redwood announced calmly. Doors burst open. State police tactical units flooded in, and behind them, federal agents armed and ready, IDs flashing. "Lots of people interested in unauthorized military operations on U.S. soil," Redwood added. But Raptor didn't flinch. He smiled instead. "You sure about that, Deputy?" He raised a phone, displaying a live video feed. "Because right now, my men have eyes on every building around this church. One word from me, and Ravencross Valley burns." Father Riker's voice came through clear, slicing the moment in two. "Assuming those men are still there." He nodded. Sister Vesper activated a small radio device, and through the speakers came chaos, gunfire, shouting, orders, engagement, the perimeter already under assault. "My old unit sends their regards," Riker said. "Turns out they're very curious why ex-special forces are running clandestine ops in rural Montana." Across the room, Mayor Drake tried to slip out, only to find his daughter blocking the way. Willow held up a folder. "Looking for these, Dad?" she asked, voice trembling but steady. "I made copies, lots of copies." She stared at the man who had betrayed his own town. "Game's over." In Ravencross Valley, a century-old secret hidden beneath St. Michael's Church draws the attention of a violent, corporate-backed force disguised as a biker gang. But the community, led by Father Riker, a former Delta Force operative, refuses to yield. What starts as intimidation quickly escalates into a full-scale siege. The gang, comprised of ex-special forces, isn't looking for silver. They're after classified documents proving historical government-sanctioned atrocities, land theft, and corporate massacres. The evidence threatens powerful families who built their empires on buried crimes. As the corporate forces deploy military-grade weapons and psychological warfare, the townspeople activate a hidden network of cultural resistance. Songs, traditions, tunnel systems, and encrypted local customs passed down for generations. The town was never just rural, it was a fortress of memory and preparation. Even when corporations attempt environmental destruction to erase the valley, their efforts backfire. Hidden defense systems redirect chemical attacks. Locals use irrigation, old flood routes, and architectural traps disguised as ordinary infrastructure. What outsiders dismissed as superstition proves to be tactical brilliance. Amid the chaos, many professional operators defect, bringing crucial evidence. Former mercenaries turn whistleblowers, exposing a nationwide system of corporate violence masked as natural disasters, criminal activity, and industrial accidents. As federal agencies respond, Ravencross Valley becomes a catalyst. Communities across the country come forward with similar stories. The truth, preserved not in files but in culture, proves indestructible. The battle ends not with the fall of a church, but the collapse of a shadow empire.